So I just caught up with ReZero Arc 7, and when I mean caught up, I have caught up completely. Like, there is no more chapters to be translated, machine translated. I am completely caught up at chapter 54 of Arc 7 of ReZero, and my goodness, to kind of summarize the last few chapters I have read, I think this quote I'm going to say is perfect. From what I have heard, you and this town's people are pretty tough. Are they tougher than the people from the Shinobi village? That line alone, that entire sentence, is easily one of the most fear-inducing moments of the entirety of Arc 7, and probably one of the hardest moments that I think Subaru has ever been in since the start of the story, because he was about to lose himself. And what I mean by this is, he was about to literally lose his mind. And Subaru's always kind of teetered on the edge of that. Always teetered on the point of, about to lose himself, go crazy, etc. We've seen this time and time again throughout many different arcs, like Arc 2, Arc 3, Arc 4, Arc 5. Well, mainly not Arc 5, mainly like 4 and 6. But he's always had those moments to where he's like almost teetering on that line. But I would say in terms of the line, Subaru was literally just like maybe not even a fraction of a centimeter away from crossing that line, and maybe there's already so much problems that's already happened thanks to that he might not ever fully recover thanks to what he just went through. But just, it is insane. Like, I already said when I opened up my video I made last week of ReZero, that Tape-sensei, he started off 2022 with Liquid Fire. He was just writing content that is just truly something that could surpass Arc 6, depending on how he takes it. And looking at how Arc 7 is going now, especially after I have caught up, it is definitely very highly likely now at this point it's going to surpass it because of what happened with the cliffhanger we were left on. So let's talk about that. So this video, obviously, a lot of spoilers if you haven't caught on. It's spoilers for the entirety of Arc 7, and I'm not going to rehash what I've already talked about in my previous videos. I mainly want to talk about the stuff that's happened since, let's say, Chapter 40 onward. Basically, the stuff pertaining to the Chaos Flame City, or the Demon City, better known as, and Subaru's encounter with one of the 9 generals, or multiple 9 Divine Generals, and, how Vincent treats him, and also how he's just dealing with, Return by Death not working properly anymore. That is one of the big things that you could take away from the latest chapters. And so let's talk about that. So in the latest chapters, Subaru is put into a position to where he piles up the bodies more than he has ever done since the beginning of the story. It's definitely not to the same level as him accepting the hand of Echidna, for instance, wanting her to help him out and all that. He makes a contract with her. I don't think it would be to the same level of the bodies piling up, but even then, the amount of bodies he piled up in just like 3 chapters alone was something that surpassed everything up to this very point in the story, because it was the shortest time frame that he's ever had to work with, and that is 10 seconds. 10 seconds is all that Subaru had before he would inevitably die. And you gotta imagine, just with 10 seconds, the normal human brain, it takes maybe a few seconds to really comprehend what you're looking at or have a response to something. It sometimes takes that. And imagine if you're just hit constantly, continuously by pain, where, your head is just getting destroyed to where you're dying instantly, and then you restart again, and you keep experiencing this just deja vu Groundhog Day of saying, oh, I heard the Chaos Flame Village people are strong, but are they as strong as the Shinobi Village? And just the way that kept repeating over and over, and you have to hear those words completely while dying, and then hearing it again on repeat continuously, it would drive anyone insane. And he was literally at that threshold of just about to just not even know what to do. He thought at that point in time when he was dying and reviving, reviving, that he finally hit a brick wall, that there was just no way for him to escape. For instance, Return by Death finally put him into a position to where he would not be able to make it out of it. That's how he felt at certain moments while that was taking place. And it's a very scary moment for the character, because Subaru, he had everything taken away from him in that moment. I mean, he was literally turned into a kid, so he didn't have even the actual flexibility that he would normally have. Even if he is an average human being, it would still be a lot better than just being a kid. But on top of that, he has 2 individuals that are, like, incredibly strong. One of the strongest individuals you can have in the whole empire that's right in front of him having a fight, and he doesn't know what he can do. Like, he's literally looking at two individuals that are on a completely different level than him, and he has no one that he really can depend on. And it's such a crazy moment, because it opens up the door for a lot of things. For one, if Subaru didn't go for what he went through with in chapter 52, 53, and 54, etc., I don't think he would have came to that full conclusion of accepting Lewis's hand and forgiving her. I think that was one of the biggest reasons that, you know, he was able to forgive her in chapter 54. Like, he was already teetering on that, but I feel like he didn't want to fully accept it. But when it hit him and he was saved by her, it resulted in him finally being able to accept that Lewis may be able to have a change of heart, which kind of opens the doorway up to a lot of things that's been happening in this arc with Subaru's themes and what he's been fighting for. Subaru doesn't want people to die. That's been a big thing with his character since the very beginning. But when you look at just how he reacts in, you know, the latest stuff with, like, you know, the witches and all that, or he talks about, you know, these sin archbishops, he doesn't really look at them as human beings. And so he's willing to just throw their lives away because he looks at them as literal monsters. But now that he's gotten to really hang out with Lewis and see that she is protecting him and dying for him, etc., it would change your perspective, especially if you're about to go insane. So I do like how this arc is flipping everything around, and it's probably going to make, you know, Subaru look at the sin archbishops in a different way. Instead of just monsters, he looks at them as individuals that have just been warped to a point to where their situation is just disheartening. But yeah, that's one thing I did want to talk about. But let's get into the big stuff that I think everybody wants to talk about, and that is Satella. So it might be possible at this point that Subaru might have his secret fully exposed. That's what I got from the latest chapter, the last chapter that Tape has written so far, that Satella literally explodes out of his mana gate, and she says, "I found you," which is just eerie in of itself. I mean, one of the things that she's always been known to say is, "I love you, I love you, I love you." That's all she's pretty much said throughout the course of the story. So her saying kind of like a different line and saying, "I found you," and then the entire world is consumed by darkness, the castle that was, you know, a bright red just being consumed by it, and just like, holy crap, this is actually happening. Because at this point in time, with what we know with the story and what has just happened, what Subaru kind of overcame with that 10 seconds, his loop is probably not going to go back to the point of, let's say, you know, that fight. He's probably not going to be in the middle of that fight when his loop actually starts. It's probably going to be at the point to when maybe Satella finds him. Because we got to look at, you know, what's been going on within the latest stuff of Arc 7. Is that somehow, we don't really know the reason, but Satella lost track of Subaru. She wasn't able to know where he was at, which resulted in Return by Death to some degree being messed up. Now, we all can take our theories and assume that what Subaru was experiencing was probably Al's ability. He was probably using Al's ability in some way to be able to reset and, you know, figure out many different paths. This is something that's been hinted at constantly with Al's ability. This is not entirely something left field, because we have all seen the hints with Al's ability that he has the potential to, you know, reset in some degree. We don't know how it fully works, but I'm assuming from what we saw from Subaru and looking at Al's character and how he's very cowardly at the moment, is probably because he realizes he cannot reset. So Subaru somehow, we don't know how, but he might have taken Al's ability away from him, which might be tied in with Satella to some degree, because we know Satella doesn't want Subaru to die. It's just her very weird attachment to him. So there's a lot of things to consider about this, but one of the things is that thanks to her not knowing where he's at, you know, Subaru is going through that trial and error of just dying and repeating for 10 seconds back to back, and he's never really been in that type of circumstance ever in the story. He's never been in a circumstance to where he's put in a position to where he literally will die as soon as he starts back up. Like, he's been in tight situations in Arc 6, but never to such a degree to where he doesn't really have time to react. Like, no time to react at all. And it makes you look at Return by Death in a very different way. Return by Death, in its own way, is very kind to Subaru, despite all of the things it's done to him. Subaru was even thinking about this himself, is that, Return by Death in its own way, despite how messed up it is, was way kinder than what he was going through, and it just goes to show whatever Al has isn't been given to him in terms of kindness and love. So I do want to know more about that, and I feel like since Subaru has probably had a connection with it, and, he's now experienced it, maybe he could talk to Al about it. We'll see. But anyways, let's get back onto the topic of Satella. With her finding him and the entire world now being basically kind of taken by darkness, and her now seeing where he's at, I doubt she will allow him to reset to a point to where she doesn't know where he's at, because technically she's connected with him. So she's not going to allow that. She won't allow the reset probably to go before that. So that means that soon as one of the 9 generals, the shinobi boy, or guy, I guess old man, the vicious old man, where he puts his hand on Subaru to, kind of undo the technique that would put him into a child's body, that's probably going to be permanent. Most likely, that's going to be permanent, and Subaru is going to have that entire sequence be done over and over again, and I feel like it's going to be up to maybe Vincent to save Subaru. This is my theory, and hear me out. One of the big things that we've seen throughout this arc is that Vincent is apparently incredibly powerful because he has the Yang Sword. We've seen this Yang Sword appear a few times, we've seen it talked about, mentioned, etc., but we never got to see Vincent really use it. And I feel like Vincent, since it's a flame, it's light itself basically, it might be able to repel Satella to some degree. And I feel like that's probably what's going to happen, is that Vincent, now knowing what Subaru has balled up inside of him, seeing it for himself, he's going to take the initiative to probably save Subaru, to hold Subaru as someone that will help him, for instance, a military strategist. So yeah, that's my 2 cents on where the story is going to go, and I feel like because of this, Subaru is not going to be able to lie. Like, he's not going to be able to properly explain, like, yeah, I got returned by death. Yeah, the Witch of Envy is attached to me to some degree. I'm a walking apocalyptic threat. That's not something you can really talk about, but it's not like he's going to be able to get around it at this point, especially with the way the entire story has been set up at this point. So I am curious on where Top A is going to start this, because from what we know at this point, at least from Vincent's own mouth, is that anyone that is, let's say, a worshipper of the Witch of Envy, or a Sin Archbishop, etc., they're executed on the spot, regardless. And seeing basically the Witch of Envy kind of pouring out of Subaru, that's a dead ringer for that man needs to be executed. So everyone that's around him that would be his friend probably won't be his friend anymore. I mean, even Al, probably seeing and looking upon that, he's probably not going to want to have anything associated with Subaru, because how do you explain something like that? You just don't, especially keeping a secret like that bottled up for so long. It makes Subaru look incredibly suspicious, because he's always been wrapped up in Sin Archbishop since the beginning of the story. So having, like, for instance, a random, outburst of darkness out of you, and if he does survive and, somehow Vincent saves him, that's going to lead to those type of questions. It's like, okay, Subaru, you're probably not a good person at this point. You probably have a dastardly plan to potentially kill us all. That's what they probably will think. So, yeah, I am, like I said, incredibly curious on where Top A wants to take it, because the story is setting up to be excellent. Which, let's take a few moments, though, to talk about Yoruna. I think that's how you pronounce her name. I really like her character. If there is one thing I grew to love in this arc, besides obviously Subaru's character and what's going on, etc., with, the Sin Archbishop of Gluttony, I like Yoruna, because she, when you first encounter her, she seems very malicious. That's your impression of her. Someone that might be crazy, is insane, someone that might not be the right person that you want to be your ally. But when you get to see Subaru encounter her, talk with her, and he experiences multiple deaths back to back, he realizes that his overall impression of her was just dead wrong, and that she was truly a kind and compassionate individual that would even try to comfort him on his deathbed time and time again. And it really hits you, because it's like the way she goes about it, like my words I'm gonna say, won't even begin to describe just how amazing of a character she is, and how much respect respect I have for her, because from what we've seen since this arc began, everyone in the Empire, they believe that the strongest survives and the weak will perish, and that there is no room for protecting the weak. And everybody thinks that, you know, Yoruna is someone that's just crazy, gonna kill people, etc., but that's actually not the case. One of the biggest reasons why people look up to her in, let's say, the Demon City, but why probably people think she's crazy, is because she wants to protect the weak despite being so freaking powerful. And because she is protecting the weak, it makes her technically weakened, because she is not able to use the full extent of her ability thanks to her using soul manipulation, attaching her very soul itself to others around her, which makes me wonder a little bit about, let's say, Return by Death, with how Yoruna attaches, like, you know, her soul to other people. I do wonder if Satella, to some degree, is doing something very similar with Return by Death. That is food for thought, especially after seeing what happened in Arc 6 with all the souls, memories, etc. That is something to definitely think about. I had to sit down and reread Arc 6 to really get my overall thoughts on that in check. But yeah, just Arc 7 is definitely a really good freaking arc, and I really want to know if Subaru is finally going to have to reveal the truth or not, because I don't think he's going to be able to back out of this one. I don't think that Satella will kill him. I mean, that's definitely something that we've always known, that Satella, she's a lot of things, but I don't think she would ever kill Subaru, or the Witch of Envy in general wouldn't kill Subaru, since we know they're two separate people, technically. But I don't think either of them would ever kill Subaru. So, because of that, I do think that Subaru will get out of it. But I don't think it's going to be something that's going to make the Witch of Envy very happy. But I guess I'm going to leave it at that. I'm going to get my thoughts together. I might make a more analytical video later on. But for now, that is just my general reaction to Arc 7 so far, now that I have fully caught up. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed it by any means, you know, leave me a like. It does help me out a lot. And if you want to get notified for whenever I upload a video, please click that bell icon down below. And with that, guys, I love you. Be safe. Chibi out.